Today's podcast is brought to you by the girl that got away. But thank God she did, because you're a fucking mess.
Down with Joe DeRosa.
Welcome to Down with Joe DeRosa. One topic, one guest, 1 hour. Today, we're talking about that thing that certain women long for and certain men are fighting to keep alive. Chivalry. Is it dead? Sometimes I wish it was, because it is such a tricky beast. Now, I'm going to speak about chivalry from the straight male's perspective, because that's the only way I've ever experienced it. And I know this: if a man doesn't act chivalrous, he's an asshole. If he's too chivalrous, he's a turnoff. Successful chivalry requires a perfect balance on an extremely thin tightrope. Determining that balance has given us guys a headache for a long, long time. Chivalry requires such precision, in fact, that several men say, screw it, I'll just treat women however I feel like, and I'll settle for having sex with the ones that'll tolerate my crap. Take me as I am. So there's your asshole. But other guys whine about how they only wish to shower women with love, and why, oh why, God, do so many members of the feminine gender refuse me when all I'm offering is what's best for them? And there's your hopeless romantic. Personally, I'd prefer to hang out with the asshole, not because I approve of his methods. He's just not as annoying. But then there are those guys that accept the challenge of trying to display true chivalry. And let me make a distinction here. I'm not talking about chivalry in the traditional sense, the stuff you see in those old one-panel newspaper cartoons from 1912, where there's a drawing of a guy putting his jacket over a puddle for a lady. That stuff, opening doors, pulling out a chair. I mean, when you think about it, that stuff just really falls under the umbrella of common courtesy. Most guys would appreciate those gestures as much as the women do. What I'm addressing is the act of treating the person you're romantically interested in like an independent, self-relying human being, while also coddling and celebrating them a bit, providing for, while allowing some space, while taking care of, while not smothering. It's tough, but it's the behavior that leads to a fair and balanced love, and love is never, ever easy. As far as I hear, I've never found it, so I don't really know. But I'd like to think that love is no good if it only makes you happy. You deserve to be a little miserable. After all, you found love. The rest of us are out here on our own, sulking, trying to figure out how the fuck chivalry works. Maybe my guest and I can crack the code today. This guy, without question, one of my favorite musicians of all time. I'm so excited that he's here. He's one of the good people, one of the folks who commits his time to writing the great American pop song. I first met him, and I'm sure he probably has no recollection of this, in 1996, backstage at the Trocadero in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I went to see his brilliant power pop band Smile open for the post-hardcore outfit Civ. After that show, we parted ways, but I followed his musical career with an eager ear and an eager eye, buying every single thing he ever released, beginning with the aforementioned Smile, whose album Girl Crushes Boy is an absolute must-have for any fan of ear-catching guitar riffs and ridiculously infectious choruses. His following band, Satisfaction, brilliantly infused 70s-era guitar and piano orchestrations with the raw and honest energy of modern-day indie rock. And after Satisfaction disbanded, he returned with Flying Sparks, exploring the softer, slower world of acoustic-heavy, heartfelt song. It's the kind of stuff that sounds great really early on a Sunday morning or very late on a Saturday night. I can't stress this enough. If you haven't yet heard the band Smile, Satisfaction, or Flying Sparks, go now to a computer and download them. Shut this podcast off and go listen. You'll thank me. And if you're in the Los Angeles area, please be sure to visit one of the solo performances he's been putting on these days. You will not only not be disappointed, you'll be thrilled that you attended. Furthermore, he'll make for great discussion today because he often sings about the heart. Please welcome Michael Rosas.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you, man?
I'm doing well.
Great. Good to see you, man.
Very good to see you, man. It's all going to be downhill from that. So yeah, every word that comes out of my mouth from this point going forward will just detract and deteriorate that wonderful image you've built up in everyone's minds about me.
You're gonna do this, dude. I believe in you. I believe in you. You're gonna carry this through. And
thanks for having me, man.
Look, don't fuck up, man. That's all there is to it. Don't fuck this up.
That's all I do. No guarantees, man.
Yeah, man. I'm so psyched you're here, dude. Like,
me too.
I was thrilled that you wanted to do the show, and then I was also thrilled when you picked the topic of chivalry, because I was like, that's perfect. That's
I think
perfect.
so.
I've heard you, sort of sing about the pitfalls of love for many years now, and some of the nicer aspects of it too. So I think you're a guy that probably has dealt with this.
A little bit, but
Yeah.
I kind of look at it as a topic where I could use a little schooling myself.
Yeah.
So I'm no expert. I was hoping you could kind of drop the knowledge on me. That's why I'm here. That's not what we're doing?
Well, let's try to figure it out together. This podcast is kind of like always like two people, like we're a little in the dark and we're just kind of trying to figure it out maybe.
Yeah.
But I think we probably have some opinions and, have some perspective on it. But I mean,
Sure.
let's start here. Where do you fall into the categories there? Are you more the guy that's like, fuck it, I'm not dealing with this? Or are you more the sort of hopeless romantic? Or are you more the guy kind of in the middle trying to figure out the right way to maneuver?
Yeah, I would say that I'm probably the guy that's sort of in the middle,
Yeah.
leaning towards the little, being a little old-fashioned, trying to be a little traditional
Right.
on the chivalrous side.
Right.
I kind of hit my dating stride in the 90s, which was this whole mixed-up decade of,
Yeah.
people trying to tear down tradition, especially in the dating world, There were, that's when at least from my perspective, the whole metrosexual male kind of
Right.
character came along, and that sort of image. And, coming out of the 90s, I think a lot of men around my age or our age were left sort of with our heads spinning, trying to figure out, where in the hell do we fit into this whole world of, trying to be a man, but also
Yeah.
trying to be modern and progressive, but also trying to be like, I don't want to be what anyone tells me to be. I want to just be myself.
Right.
So
Well, it's tough because how old are you, if you don't mind?
40.
40. So I'm 36. We're essentially in the same age bracket. What was so tough for me was I feel like in many, many, many walks of life, but this one being no exception with dating and stuff, we come from a generation where the sort of tradition and ideas and values, for lack of a better term, that got instilled in us by our parents and the generation before us didn't apply anymore.
right.
Like I felt like we were part of the first generation that sort of broke this mold of like, you get out of school and you get married and you have your kids and you stay with your wife. And if you cheat, you
Yeah.
don't talk about it,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, like you said, in the 90s, I was in college in the 90s, so it was suddenly super uber independence and completely free sexuality. And I don't mean that in the sense of like hetero versus homo. I mean like just people like openly having sex, and it was totally cool, like
Sure.
far beyond anything that the 60s, in my opinion,
Probably.
claimed. But and you're suddenly there, and then you're trying to act like a certain way on a date or in romantic pursuit of somebody because this is the way you were raised and this is how you're supposed to do it, and all of a sudden none of that stuff applied, and like you said, your head starts spinning, and you're like,
Right.
I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this,
Right.
And you were also, add the layer of the fact that you were touring in rock music in the 90s. I mean,
Right.
that certainly couldn't have made it any easier to.
No. Yeah. Very strange. And then also, is your impression of that decade also that's when sort of the irony and sarcasm kind of came into full effect as part of one of, I think a lot of people started adopting sarcasm and irony as a default part of their sense of humor,
Right.
more than I noticed maybe in the 80s, but I don't know.
No, it
So-
totally was. It totally was.
Maybe people were scoffing at tradition just to be ironic or just to be kind of like, I don't even know why I'm mocking certain things or certain traditions, but it just feels right now because that's what everyone's doing.
Yeah, it was the era of great irony, and that certainly bled into this decade too. The last, God Almighty, we're going on 3 decades of irony right now, and it's finally starting to fade away a little bit,
Yeah.
thankfully. But yeah, it was the breaking in of that sort of that irony thing. it was also, I think, the beginning of the sort of entitlement phase, which is in full swing now.
Sure.
With sort of Twitter personalities and all that stuff. But so when you question things back then, the attitude was like, well, duh. You know what I mean? Like, how dare you? I remember when I was in college, a big thing was becoming like trendy lesbianism.
Yes.
Where girls were just hooking up with other girls just because.
Sure.
And then you'd be like, what? You know, if you would be like, oh, do you like girls? Well, I don't. Why does it have to be that I like girls? But it's like, dude, I'm just asking. I'm sorry. Like, like if I hooked up with a guy, it would mean I liked guys. I hook up with girls. I like girls.
Right.
And that period, there was a lot of that. Like people would do like new behaviors, and then if you dared try to define them by those behaviors, that somehow was insulting.
Right.
Which I never understood. You know, I always thought, like, if you should be proud of the thing you are, why is me giving you any sort of label with it like an insult? You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah, I totally know what you're talking about, and I've never been able to really put my finger on what, how to explain it to myself. I just sort of moved on,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But I think that, when you were talking about the traditions and just trying to navigate where we fit in, and I was mentioning that I kind of feel like I'm right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, I'm all for society trying to progress and trying to, just questioning things. But I feel like the best way to do it maybe is to have something in your back pocket for when you decide to tear a tradition down, you might want to replace it with something better. But I feel like in the time when I started dating, there were a lot of traditions that were being torn down in one way or another, but not being replaced with anything. So it was just kind of like, well, let's get rid of all of that chivalry nonsense, but not replace it with anything. You just kind of figure it out for yourself,
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's kind of, that's a sliver of the entitlement thing too. Well, we're going to sort of torch this thing, burn it to the ground.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, whatever, man. You know? And it's like, that's kind of a shitty approach to things. I mean, I was, I'm sort of an odd case, I think, when it comes to chivalry, because when I first started dating, was certainly in the hopeless romantic category.
Mm.
And, sometimes that does help get you laid a little bit,
Sure.
A girl going like, oh, it's so sweet. And then she realizes it's not that fun for more than one day or whatever.
Right.
And I through the pitfalls and whatever of being this sort of hopeless romantic type, I started to get aggravated. And then I swung over to the other side where I was like, man, fuck this. I'm going to fucking do what I want. Da-da-da. And again, sometimes that sort of, gunslinger, impetuous, no care for anything behavior will get you laid. It's usually not going to bring anything fulfilling. But you can accidentally score here and there.
Sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, unless you're fulfilled by constant one-night stand, sure, why not? And now in the last, I don't know, 10 years or whatever it is, I've really tried to be back into the middle of the thing and figure it out, because it's just so hard though, man, because how do you, I mean, I really believe true chivalry is like I said in the intro, providing for while also allowing for.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? On both sides.
Sure.
It's like the man has to do that for the woman has to do that for the man, or the woman for the woman, or the man for the man, or whatever. But I think that's what chivalry really is. Like saying to somebody like, I respect you, do your thing, but I also love you, and if you need shelter, I'll provide that. It's such a complicated balance. And that's what's so hard for me, because it's, even when you're being, quote, chivalrous, unquote, it still kind of feels like you're playing a little bit of a game.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that, I totally get the idea that sometimes you want to do things that can be considered as chivalrous because you want to show love or you want to show respect to somebody. But do you ever think that sometimes there's value in doing things like that just to make your life easier and just to make things, just to kind of add some lubrication to life, just to make things go a little more smoothly.
Yeah.
And that maybe the meaning, there is no meaning beyond that, sometimes, maybe it's just like, hey, I'm going to just get in the habit of doing certain things so that I just don't have to think about it, and the other person I'm with doesn't have to think about it either. If they like it, they're used to it. I like it. I'm used to it. We've got something going here. It works. Not to take all of the romance out of it and all of the nice, pretty things out of it. I think that there might be a little bit of that goes along with chivalry and just, generosity and etiquette in general.
I think you just solved it.
Uh-oh. We have like another 40 minutes to go.
I think that's it.
All
I think that's the whole thing. All chivalry is just do things.
It's life lube.
To me.
Relationship lube.
Yeah. Just make your life easier. It's at the end of the day, it's just who wants the headache?
Yeah.
Who wants the headache?
Well, let me there's so many things, especially, nowadays that, it seems like there's a lot of emphasis, like in every aspect of our life. Sometimes, at least for me, I don't know about you, but I would think, as a comedian, you probably feel obligated to some degree. Maybe I'm wrong, but to really think about almost every aspect of your life in depth, to kind of just understand every nuance and try to, maybe there's material there or whatnot. But, sometimes there are just things in life, I think, for me, that I just don't want to have to think about, and maybe that sounds bad, but let me ask you, like, if you're sitting and you're writing, let's say you're working on new material and you're just, you're just thinking like, man, I want to put in 100% of myself and my energy into just coming up with some new material that the next time I go out and do a show, I just want people to crap themselves. Like, I literally want poop to come out of them into their pants. So that's what you got to be thinking about. That's the most important thing. You shouldn't have to also be thinking about, your day-to-day things like, who do I open a door for? Or who, am I going to buy dinner tonight when I go out with my girl or whatnot? There should be things that are just a given. You don't have to think about it, or else you just have too many distractions, right? So
I agree.
Just having that stuff nailed.
Well, I'm glad you bring this up, because I totally agree with you. There are things that I do that I'm just like, look, this is autopilot stuff. Like, this is it. Like, I like to cook. So if I date a girl and she's not into cooking, that's cool. Like I got this. I'll cook us dinner. I like planning meal. I'm a big food guy. So meals are a big thing for me. So I never, it sounds like I'm patting myself on the back that I cook a fucking meal for somebody. I don't mean it like that.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I just mean like, that's one of those things, like, it's like a given to me.
Yeah.
There would never be a part of me that's like, I cook all the time. Jesus.
Yeah.
Could you appreciate it? It would just be like, yeah, I'll cook for us. It's totally cool.
Sure.
I'm not cooking. I'll figure out what we're going to eat for dinner. I'll buy us whatever. That's like one of those things I don't even think about it. And I don't think, here's the thing though, I don't think about it until after. There are certain times you date somebody and you start to feel like, I guess I'm contradicting what I just said, but you date somebody sometimes and you start to feel like they don't have an appreciation for it. And that's when it starts to mess with my head. I don't have a problem with the relationship lube concept at all. I think that's totally right. When it starts to get complicated, though, and have you ever been in this position, you're doing these nice things, just not even thinking about them. Again, autopilot. Sure. But then you start to realize, like, man, she never says thank you.
Right.
That kind of sucks. And then that starts to mess with you.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where you go, honey, it's bothering me. I noticed she never say thank you. And then you're in this, like, curb your enthusiasm argument.
Right.
Well,
that's one of the tricks about chivalry, I think, is that, and I don't know, I didn't, I wasn't around when this whole concept was invented, but my perception is that maybe in the early stages, it was something that came more as something that you would do for yourself and to be, to be a better, not a better person. That's not really what I want to say, but that you do it for yourself. You do it for other people, but it's something that you do because it makes your life better and you are doing your part in making life easier for everybody else. When you start to look for the reward, I think that's when it almost stops being chivalry and it starts being more of a game, right?
I totally agree. Well, two things on that. I don't think you should do the things to look for the reward, obviously. But that's why I say it's a Curb Your Enthusiasm style argument. It gets to a point where you start to go, I'm not doing it for the reward.
Yeah.
I'm
but noticing I want the reward.
There's never a reward.
Yeah.
And then that gets.
Yeah.
I remember I was at my friend's house and they were having a birthday party for his daughter. And his wife looked really tired.
Yeah.
They had 18 4-year-olds in the house screaming and dancing, and they're playing What Does the Fox Say? And the kids are going crazy and whatever.
Love that song.
Yeah. So do 4-year-olds. These kids went batshit. And they watched it 3 times in a row. Because I forgot you did that when you were 4.
Sure.
But anyway, she looked exhausted, and they had this big kitchen, and there were cake plates and chocolate smears everywhere. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? My first time meeting my buddy's wife, first time in his house, I'm going to clean this whole kitchen right now. Clean the whole kitchen. No, thank you. She didn't say thank you. And then I went out with my buddy, and it was literally like this Larry David moment where I was like, he's like, "Did you have fun today?" I'm like, I did, but
yeah.
I say no, thank you. I cleaned the whole,
Yeah.
And it was driving me crazy.
Right.
I wasn't doing it to get the thank you, but then when the thank you wasn't there, I couldn't get over it. Now that's my own bullshit, and
you're a dick.
I'm a little bit of a dick.
Yeah, that's
I'm
okay.
a little bit of a dick.
That's okay.
Thank you. I swear to God, before you were here today, I was thinking, I was like, I bet I come off a little bit like a dick to Michael. A little bit. Like I feel like we're two men from different cloths. You and
I don't know.
I don't know. You did light up a little bit when I was talking about being an asshole and just like crushing ass.
Yeah.
And saying it was kind of empty, and you were kind of like, well, let's not go that far. So maybe we are more akin than I thought. But so that was the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing was about chivalry's history and where it started. I think it started in a time where women were, condescended to. Like, women can't be on their own. They're not capable. They're not strong and emotionally or physically or whatever. They need the man to do everything.
Sure.
You couldn't dare walk through a puddle. I'll put my jacket over it. You couldn't dare get hit with a piece of garbage being tossed out of a second-story window. I'll walk on the outside of the street. You couldn't dare handle having a job. Stay in the kitchen, but you don't need shoes, so be barefoot and all that stuff. I think that's where it started.
Sure.
You provide for the woman, you protect the woman because the woman can't do anything for herself.
Yeah.
And then it sort of transformed from that into the more modern era of the 40s and 50s, where women were able to do a little bit more for themselves than we were allowing them to do.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, that's what a man does for his lady, that's
right.
what a gentleman does, whatever. And then the 60s and 70s hit, and women obviously had way, way, way more feminism.
Yeah.
And then to me, chivalry became more about like a respect thing. It was more like that sort of, this is where it starts to get complicated too, because it was that sort of, who's the lady, the feminism, the famous feminist?
Oprah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But not the talk show Oprah. There was a famous feminist leader named Oprah. She was the only other Oprah in history. Her name's Oprah Feminism. That's where the name comes. That's where the term comes from. What's the lady?
I'm blanking on it right now.
Totally blank. Ernie, who's the famous feminist lady from the 70s? I keep wanting to say Janis Joplin. It's not
That's
Janis
her.
Joplin.
No.
Bridget Bardot. It's not her. She's got a name like that. The lady that hooked up with the girl from Deep Throat, and oh my God, just three idiots in action right now. Nobody can. God damn it. Vanessa Redgrave. What the fuck was her name? I know none of these names are right. I got to look this up. But anyway, as I look this up, at that time, during that era, it became there was a respect thing. There was like, you better treat me like a woman because I'm your equal.
Right.
I'm not your subordinate. And then that's where chivalry almost started to get, I think, looked down on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it started to become like, I don't need no man to open my door.
Yeah.
I can pay for my own meals.
Hey, not to get sidetracked, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Though. Have you ever actually seen that jacket over the puddle thing work? How does that work, man? I want to see that demonstrated. Because I'm just picturing some dude out in front of Skybar with his H&M, like kind of poly blend, made in Indonesia sport coat, throwing it over a puddle, and just, I'm seeing that thing just get waterlogged and just going, it becomes the puddle. Who's walking on that?
I feel like I've never seen it work. I've never seen it even attempted.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it. Ted Alexandro has a great joke about it where he's like the guy putting the jacket over the puddle. He's like, well, there's another solution. You could just walk around the puddle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would be my take on it.
I think giving a woman a piggyback ride over a puddle would be way more chivalrous than throwing your jacket down, because then what if she needs the jacket later because she's cold? How are you? That's another.
She's going to wear a wet coat.
Anyhow, sorry.
And she's going to get hypothermia. And then she's going to be home in the house where she should have been all along.
That's right. There's your equal.
I'm still trying to look up the famous feminist. This is embarrassing that nobody can remember her name.
She must not have been hot.
Mike with the evil joke. You're Mike on that joke.
Oh, no.
I asked Michael before the podcast, I said, do you prefer Michael or Mike? He said, I prefer Michael. And I assumed as much. You look like a guy that would prefer Michael.
Really?
Yeah. And you got a nice crisp look about you.
Wow.
You're a very respectful man.
Okay.
You're a respectable man.
Okay.
And I said, that's a guy that likes to be called Michael. It's distinguished, whatever. But that was Mike right there. Mike just came
sorry,
out.
off topic, but
Yeah.
when I was Michael my entire life, at some point as a kid, I got the image in my head of what a Michael looks like, and it was this creepy 70s kind of photographer / pervert guy with just a weird, strange mustache and weird wavy hair. I don't know where that image came from, by the way. Hopefully it was from TV and not somebody that I'm blocking from my past. And I just decided, no, I'm not that guy. I'm Mike. Mike is cool. And then later on, I got a bad association with Mike instead and just thought, I'm going back to Michael.
What was the bad association with Mike?
I don't know exactly. I think it just sounded a little, I don't know. Sorry.
I like
off topic.
I don't agree with your image of Michael.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound right.
I always
now. Did then.
No, Michael sounds right to me.
Oh, it does.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't agree with your creepy image with the name Michael.
That's
of
what
the
I
hair.
yeah.
Yeah, like I think all I think of when you say Michael, I think of Kit in Knight Rider saying
Yes.
Michael, and it always sounds sort of elegant.
Michael Knight. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd say Michael Knight was probably very chivalrous, considering his last name was Knight.
Yes.
So he was probably following the Knight's code.
Yeah. And it was
often.
spelled KN.
Yes.
I believe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Gloria Steinem.
Yes.
That's the...
Had no clue.
Here's the more embarrassing part. Not only could the three of us not remember Gloria Steinem, not one of us was like, Susan B. Anthony? Nobody got that one either. Who really deserves all the credit.
Well,
yeah, no.
we're still learning here.
I wonder if Michael Knight from Knight Rider was chivalrous. He seemed like he was crushing ass every week.
Yeah.
Right?
He was mysterious about it, though.
There was always like a different... He was from that era of like... There's a lot of those guys back then on TV. It was like Michael Knight, Face Man from the A-Team, Magnum P.I.
Yep.
There was like that was the thing back then, like good-looking guy,
Yeah.
solving crimes, killing guys, blowing shit up.
Yeah. And every now and then they had this shit grin that just really... all it took was for you to see that grin, and you knew they were just crushing ass.
Yeah, yeah.
Nonstop.
And none of them were tough guys.
Nope.
If you had a problem, if you had a major problem in your life, like a serious situation, like we've got a gang of crooks over in that building over there, they've got hostages, there's guns, there's a bomb that needs to be defused. What are we going to do? And Tom Selleck showed up. You'd be like, what the fuck are we going to do with this guy right now?
Yeah.
This guy is worthless.
Yeah.
Him? Could you imagine if what's-his-face showed up? Who's the guy that played Michael Knight? David Hasselhoff?
Hasselhoff.
He
Yeah.
showed up to help you out of a jam?
No, he'd be helping you out of your relationship by wandering off with your girlfriend.
Imagine that now. In this day and age, imagine Hasselhoff trying to pick up your girl. You'd be like, dude, take her on a vacation. I'm not worried about it. There's no way she's going to fuck you, David Hasselhoff. This isn't, there was a time, though. There was a time you wouldn't let that guy within 100 yards of your house.
Yeah, well, these are the things that us men tell ourselves so we can sleep better at night. But I have a feeling if that scenario were tested, we might be surprised at the result.
Now, do you have a girl now?
No.
No?
No.
When was the last time you were in a relationship?
A couple of years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, they're gonna be swarming after you after they hear this podcast.
Yeah.
They're talking about crushing ass and can't remember the names of feminists.
Yeah. Well,
Women love that sort of thing.
got my priorities in order.
So now, when you were in that last relationship,
Yeah.
how long did it last for?
A few years.
A few years.
Yeah.
Did you find your relationship lube, chivalry theory at work in that time, or were you still trying to figure things out?
No, I think so. Yeah. And the reason it's not something that just comes to mind very quickly is because I don't think I had to think about it often. However, the relationship did end, and supposedly part of the reason for that end was the fact that I was not considerate enough or did not think of the other person's feelings enough. So maybe it was my lack of chivalry that led to the end of the relationship. But
Right.
I feel like, I'm at the point now where I feel like I've got the basics down pretty well, as a matter of habit. But, you never know who you're dealing with. When you get into a relationship, are you
Yeah.
with somebody who's going to constantly be kind of putting you in check? Are they going to be testing you? Or is it somebody who's just adamantly opposed to that type of behavior? They're not about chivalry at all? Or is it somebody who expects it nonstop? It takes a little while to figure that out. You have to get into a groove, and you probably have to compromise a little bit, because you can't be the guy that's like, no, I'm waiting for the woman who is 100% on board with every bit of, everything that I want to do. So it's like, I'm not buckling down until I meet a woman who lets me open every single door. I'm paying for every check. I'm doing this. You kind of have to compromise. You can't be
Right.
Mr. Chivalry. You just have to go in with your basic, this is kind of what I do, but I can, do a little less of this, a little more of this, and then see if it works out.
Yeah, it is like preparing, it's like preparing your traditional Sunday tomato gravy
Yeah,
for a new person.
sure.
And that's what your chivalry is. It's like it's accommodating, it's supposed to be fulfilling, it's supposed to be nurturing, and but do you not like so much salt? Is it too much salt in my gravy that I've been making for
Sure.
25 fucking years?
Yeah,
All right, I'll pull back on the Oh, you want a little more basil? All right, well,
yeah.
basil's not really my thing, but okay, a little more basil. And you're just adjusting this recipe, and it's so hard because it's the recipe, it's just ingrained. It's so secondhand
Yeah.
to you. And it's so funny with what you're saying with the relationship ended because you weren't attentive enough, or
Maybe.
or
who knows? Who knows?
exactly. So that stuff always kills me. I know so many guys and girls too, but again, the only reason I talk about this, listeners, from a straight male perspective, is not to alienate. It's just that's just been my dating experience.
Sure.
So I've known so many guys in that position where they go, "Yeah, she said I wasn't, I didn't care enough," and whatever. And you're
Mhm.
sitting there going, "This is a great guy.
Yeah.
This is a great guy. Maybe maybe being attentive to emotions isn't the problem. Maybe relationships are just the goddamn problem. Maybe it's just not a normal thing to get that down and dirty with somebody for extended periods of time, which I have always believed it really isn't. I do believe it. I'm not against it. I'd like to experience it for longer than my 9-month limit that I've ever made it to.
Sure.
But I do think it's unnatural. You're fighting against basic biology, very, very basic stuff. And for some reason, we ignore it. And again, these are traditions that started, we've talked about this before on the podcast, marriage and exclusivity and these things. These started back when you lived till you were 35 years old and women weren't able to do things for themselves and you weren't allowed to be openly gay. And there were a bunch of bullshit rules and unfortunate circumstances back then that made, extreme intimacy for what back then was an extended period of time make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And as we progress, it stops making sense.
Right.
But I just know so many guys where I go, this guy is a complete gentleman, and I don't know you that well. We really just met today, but you seem like a nice guy.
I do okay.
Yeah, I can't really picture you being an asshole. You get a sense of somebody pretty quickly. Like, we all have our moments. But
sure.
You seem like a decent guy. And my friend Vince the other night said to me, he goes, Joe, talking about you the other night, you got a good heart, man. You got a good heart. It's like, I wish half the girls I dated thought that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing wrong, but my guy friends love me and my girlfriends love me.
Sure.
But a girlfriend, a girl I'm dating, it is a whole, I'm not saying they hate me, but there's all of a sudden this complication of like, you're kind of selfish and you don't do this, you don't do that, and whatever. It's like, so I'm not chivalrous enough. I'm the guy that all my friends thank for getting us all together all the time.
Yeah.
I'm always like trying to facilitate and plan and orchestrate and like make sure everybody's having fun. And I think I'm a pretty accommodating guy, but something is missing when you get into that intimate romantic relationship. And so maybe the relationships are the problem.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that there is a certain aspect of being in a relationship that just always feels a little unnatural, But I think that, a lot of what we do in life, especially men, is completely unnatural. I think, if we were to just to fall back on our natural, just everything just went back to, I think naturally, I think people are just kind of shitty. And I think that we're just doing everything we can to just stay out of the dark pit, and, so
what's the dark pit?
It's just falling into our own darkness, just being the most awful. I just think that all of the years and years and, centuries that have gone by where we've developed traditions and just different things that sometimes just, it's good to question these things, but I think that sometimes we just forget that sometimes that a lot of those things are there because we just need something to keep us motivated and to keep us from just wandering around killing each other and, just wandering around just, pillaging and looting and just, so, I'm always for trying to, like I was saying before, to better things. I don't want the world to just stay the same forever. Right. But at the same time, I just think, well, we are progressing and developing things to move ourselves away from where we used to be as a civilization or as a just as human beings.
Sure.
Where we were naturally. It was natural how we were, and we're trying to get away from that. So things like chivalry, things like relationships, things like marriage and stuff. I'm not saying that they're good or bad, right or wrong or anything, but they aren't necessarily natural. So
yeah, I agree.
I dig that. It's so we have to do our little part and play our role. And people get down on things like chivalry sometimes, and I lucky for me, maybe I just don't attract this type of person, but I've never been with a woman who was just straight up just down on chivalry. I've never offered to buy somebody dinner and had them just freak out, that I was some sort of sexist, chauvinist oppressor, but
Michael, let me tell you about some of the gems I've unearthed over the years. I have a I actually have a friend. This is a girl that I dated very briefly back in college, and now she's a friend of mine. And I remember one day we were what the hell was it? We were walking, and I said, I do this with every girl that I ever walk down a street with. I go, let me walk on the outside.
Yeah.
Let me walk on the outside.
I do that too.
Dude, you're literally the only other guy I've ever met that does it.
Huh.
And do you get this? Every time I do it for a girl, she's like, what are you doing? And I explain it. I'm like, the guy's supposed to walk on the outside in case it comes from when they would dump trash out of the windows, I guess. And in case a car jumps the curb.
Splashes. Splash or jump in the curb.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always very well received. You know, most women are like, that's so sweet. But my friend, I was doing it one day, and I go, let me walk on the outside. And she's like, what do you do? I'm fucking fine. I can take care of myself. And I was like, man, I have met so many girls like you in my life where it's like you're so you take a gesture and somehow turn it into an insult.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. It's crazy. I've had girls almost yell at me about paying for a meal.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, dude, I'm just trying to do a nice thing for you.
Right.
I'm not saying you can't pay for your own meal.
Right.
I'm just trying to be a guy.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Have you ever had I'm sure you have, but can you remember the last time a man opened a door for you?
A man opened a door for me?
Yeah. You know, let's say you're just walking into a coffee shop or something. Does your friend ever open a door? No, it doesn't happen?
Not only can I not remember that, I mean, I've had people in recent years sort of hold the door open for me.
Okay.
Like they go in first and then they hold the door.
Well, okay, better then how about just a male friend getting the tab at lunch? Buying you a cup of coffee, maybe, something
that happens
like that.
a lot.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you ever take it as an insult? Like, what the fuck, man? Are you saying I can't buy my own lunch? You saying that I don't have a job? Are you saying I'm inferior?
I never take it as an insult.
Right.
I'll feel bad and I'll go, come on, dude, you don't got to get lunch.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or you got it last time. Let me get it.
But sometimes it just makes you feel better, or it makes you feel good to buy your friend lunch.
Absolutely.
Or something, right?
Absolutely.
So it's the same thing. Like, you're just doing something. The intention is good.
Yeah.
Your intention is not, I'm going to show this woman that she's inferior to me by standing, on the curbside, right? So I think it's bizarre that somebody, not just a woman, but just anyone in general, man, woman, whatever, would turn that into an insult.
Well, in their defense,
says a lot about them.
In their defense, while I pay the bill, I make them hold my belt loop like we're in prison. And
no, that's okay. I think that's okay.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's like, it's just this nice gesture.
Yeah.
And girls get really, not all girls. I've met plenty that were very, gracious. But I've also met a bunch that were seemingly insulted by it. Yeah. It's a guy. I'd love it if a man held a door open for me once in a while.
Yeah.
Never happens. I'll tell you what bothers me a lot is, and again, this is going back to do you do it for the reward or you do it just to do it?
Sure.
And I know this is a hang up of mine, but I hold the door for people, and when they don't say thank you, it drives me fucking crazy.
Right.
It's like, hey, lady, I don't know you.
Yeah.
I'm just being a gentleman right now. I just held a door for you. You literally walked through the door and past me into this place. I'm not a doorman.
Right.
Like, say thank you. That's incredible to me.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's I don't think that's necessarily an entitled female thing. I think there's just an incredible lack of manners.
Sure.
In the present day culture, we talked about how entitled everything is. Like, I think people just aren't very mannerly anymore.
Absolutely.
So even when they're accepting a nice gesture, they don't even realize it because they're like, it's just not even in their wheelhouse. They're like, I would never do that for somebody.
Yeah, it's
Who's
a weird
this
time.
weirdo.
It's a weird time for just etiquette in general. In chivalry, kind of being like in relationships, sort of being at the top of that. But all the way down to just the small gestures as well. It's a confusing time, which is, I think you just kind of, if you're gonna make the decision to be somebody who goes out and does certain things like holding doors and things, I think part of that routine is just accepting the idea that there are going to be people that are just going to look at you like, what the hell are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
You know, what time are you from? You know,
Yeah,
where do you come from?
Yeah. It's transitioned from a why not mentality into a why mentality.
Yeah.
Like, 10 years ago, as little as 10 years ago, I think it was still kind of why not?
Yeah.
I did a nice thing. Why not? Why wouldn't I do a nice thing? It's a
Right.
nice thing to do. Now it's very like, why? I don't have to. I get that a lot, especially with comedians. Comedians can be real shitty people sometimes. They can be the best people that I've ever been around.
Sure.
But some of them can be really terrible.
Wow,
And-
that's weird. I never experienced that kind of thing in the music scene. Musicians are all top-notch people.
They're all really
Every
wonderful,
musician
really
I've
giving.
met. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never hesitate to loan them money if they need it,
Right.
because I know I'll get it back promptly.
Yeah, you'll definitely get that back. Yeah. They just need to stay on your couch for a few days.
Sure.
And it's always just a few days.
Sometimes just less than that. Yeah, for sure. No, sorry, go on.
So funny, man. My friend is a music engineer, and all he hangs out with, or for a period, all he hung out with were musicians. And we would go to these parties sometimes, and I would come home and I would be like, who the fuck are these people, man? Do any of them have homes? Do any of them have a place to just kind of live? Like, even if you need to have 4 or 5 roommates, just your own place.
Right.
Like, everybody was staying at some girl's house. Nobody had any money. Everybody was borrowing. It was just like a very strange dynamic. Is that the case in all music scenes, or is that just the one I was exposed to?
Jeez, I don't know. Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, yeah, it sounds right to me.
And I don't say that to shit on musicians. I love music so much, and I love the people that make it. But it was just a new. Well, here's the thing: like, it is creative people in general, and it's different in all scenes. And with comics, it's a different thing. Comics have, I always say the difference between comedy and music is that comedians can make more money for themselves right off the bat, but the return is much less. I think musicians have a much higher chance of getting to that place where there's true fandom surrounding their work. Comedians have a much smaller shot of that. And I think the payoff is, but in comedy you can make steady money along the way a little more easily. And so that creates different dynamics in the different scenes. And that's the thing with comics is, I think because so early on we're able to make cash off of telling jokes about our dicks, we start to get very entitled and very pretentious and very just kind of fuck yourself.
Right.
Whatever, bro. And that's the point I was getting at. Like, so many comics will just be like, I'm a bitch, sorry.
Yeah.
And I'm not singling out female comics. That's just the best way to.
Oh, I thought you were impersonating a guy right there anyway. I was picturing a guy.
Like, oh yeah, like a sassy.
Yeah.
I'm a bitch, sister.
Sorry.
I just pictured a buzzer going off every time he says that. I'm a bitch, sorry. But and it's like, yeah, just because you own it doesn't mean it's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't, and that's so the climate of everything right now. It's like, well, at least I admit it.
Yeah.
Well, then what? That means you're just an open piece of garbage?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's okay.
Right.
Like, challenge yourself to be a better person. Actually, have some grace and tact.
Yeah.
And, like, keep some of that shit in your head.
Right.
And, like, I think that's going away a lot. And I saw it first with a lot of comedians because that was just kind of the world we were functioning in.
Yeah.
And again, like, I talked about going to hang out with the musicians. When I would bring non-comics into the comic scene, we would leave parties and they would be like, who the fuck are these people you hang out with?
Yeah.
They're horrible. They are constantly trying to be funny. They won't shut the fuck up. They're talking over everybody the whole time. But now that's that's completely spreading over into the pool with everybody because of social media, I think, and reality TV is a big culprit,
Right.
As long as I win the money prize, I can be a complete piece of trash.
Well, yeah, do you think that, people like us, even though we sort of exist in different circles, I think we've established they're very similar in a lot of ways. Do you think that our concept of chivalry and etiquette in general is just heavily skewed compared to the rest of the country and maybe the rest of the world, just because of the fact that we spend most of our time in these very small scenes, these very small, relative to the whole
Sure.
world, pockets, spending a lot of time in LA and New York, hanging around with a lot of creative people where, I know that it's possible to get this sense of, and especially again through social media and everything, where you can kind of get this false sense of what the culture is when
Right.
it's really nothing like that. And maybe if we were just living in some state somewhere else and living a totally different life, or maybe, just living a completely different lifestyle, maybe it wouldn't be as confusing. Maybe it would just be so simple, and all of the women you would meet would just be like, yeah, of course you would do this for me.
Yes.
Because that's what you do, and it just makes life less of a fucking hassle. And I'm not going to
Absolutely.
question whether or not you're insulting me or not. It's just about, let's just get through the day without wanting to kill each other. And this is part of how we do it,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really believe that traditional. There's no way for me to say this without insulting somebody that's listening right now, but it's where I came from and it's how I feel. For me, I'm not saying for you, for me, I believe that traditional suburban life is hell on earth. I couldn't exist in it.
Yeah.
I couldn't exist in it in a world where you walk out the front door of your house and all you see is the front door of everybody else's house.
Sure.
I can't do it. Like, I need to be in an area where if you go a block that way, there are people that are doing things publicly. There are restaurants and coffee houses where you can experience cuisine that you don't get to have every day part of your regular diet, whatever. There are cultural experiences. There are stores to go and learn new things and books and records and whatever.
Yeah.
I have to be around that. But being around that means that it's also surrounded, that area is also surrounded by other people that feel the way I do.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're constantly in the mix of this sort of culturally or intellectually, whatever you want to put the tag, whatever the tag is, stimulating situation, it's a lot easier to go, well, what's that about over there? What's that about over there? What's that about over there? And who's this person? Is that person cooler than that person?
Yeah.
Because I thought this person really knew what the fuck they were talking about, but actually maybe they don't. Maybe that person really does. And you're
right.
You're kind of like a cat and there's lights darting all around the walls. Yeah. Whereas in the suburbs, I mean, if I lived in the suburbs as a single man, I would be like, I have to get married.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get married. I have to settle down. Another great song by Smile. I have to get married. I have to married. That's another song. I'm naming a bunch of old Smiled songs here. Yeah. I don't have a copy of that EP, by the way. That's the one thing I don't have. You guys, Smile put out a thing called 5-song demo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's online. I'll give you a link later.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, I got to get that. So,
technology.
Anyway, digressing. Yes, technology. I've been trying to get it and I couldn't find it.
I'll give it to you.
Anyway, but I have to get, if I lived in the suburbs, I have to get married. I have to settle down because if I don't, I am going to be in my own personal hell.
Yep.
When I first got out of college, I moved down to Texas for a little while in Austin, which was a really fun time. And then I moved back to Pennsylvania to become a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't live. I started in Philadelphia, but I didn't live in Philadelphia. I lived in the suburbs outside of Philadelphia, solid 45-minute drive. And I lived in a townhouse with two of my buddies, and everybody around us was a young or old married couple. And dude, when I tell you, it was like looking down the barrel of a gun. Like there was no hope.
Right.
My roommate Scott had a girlfriend who was eventually to become his wife, and it was obvious that it was headed in that direction.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to go out and try to meet girls. My friend Dan, who also lived with us, was single, and just started, and then just like shortly after starting a relationship. And I was like this single guy on my own, trying to find love or at least sex.
Yeah.
In this suburban landscape, and it wasn't there. You couldn't find it. Everybody was in a relationship, fresh out of the box, man. 21 hit, they got into a relationship. 22 hit, they were engaged. 23 hit, they were married. 24, they were pregnant. It was like clockwork.
Yeah.
And I was just there by myself and thought, man, years later when I was in New York, I thought, if I still lived there, maybe I'd be married.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty easy. But now I'm living in Manhattan, and I walk down a street, and within one city block, I see 7 women that I would murder that man over there to have sex with because they're so hot.
Yeah.
How the fuck? There's no way. How am I going to settle down here? It's too much. It's just too much stimuli going on, you know?
Yeah.
And I think I don't know, a lot of it is that for me, like it'd be easier to just sort of play that traditional game if there wasn't as much hope, But I think sometimes being in a more metropolitan or diverse area, it gives you a little too much hope.
Right.
And then you play that chivalry game a bit, but if you feel like it's not really being received well, it's a lot easier to go, screw you.
Yeah, because there are just so many other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I could have said it as quickly as you just did. I chose to say the 5-minute version.
It's okay. It's fascinating. Here it is summed up in 2 sentences. I saw some of my friends making a horrible mistake by getting married and having kids. I wanted to hang out at bars and drink and meet women for at least another 10 to 20 years of my life. And it's easier to do that in New York.
That was the whole thing. Can you come be a part of every podcast, and then you'll just restate everything quickly, and then we'll edit me out and just have you, and we'll have 2-minute podcasts.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Speed podcast.
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes when I'm on stage, I'll realize I have the light. Like they give you a light in comedy when you have to wrap up.
Yeah.
And I'll get the light, and I'll be like, oh my God, we don't have time to do the whole closer. It's like a 7-minute story.
Right.
And I'll go, okay, fuck it, here it is in a nutshell, and I'll condense it into a 2.5-minute thing, and it'll kill. And I'll be like, really just wasting a lot of people's time every other night.
Maybe that's the secret to keeping a relationship going is you can kind of, as the guy, maybe you can kind of slack on the chivalry a little bit until you start to feel like it's getting a little rocky, like you think that your girl's going to dump you, then it's just real quick, like, you just start throwing it in fast, get a door, buy a meal, bring some flowers. I think a lot of guys actually do that. I mean,
I think they do.
I just said that as a what if, and I just realized I'm describing every relationship.
Yeah. I think in some circumstances that's defined as abusive. He treats me real bad, but once in a while he buys me flowers.
Exactly. And a lot of people are okay with that. I think that's happy relationship.
Yeah, maybe that's all chivalry is. Maybe we just cracked the code. It's a light form of abuse.
Yes.
It's neglect and then coddling.
I
just
think
brief coddling just for a minute.
Yeah.
And then you just neglect, and then coddle right when you're scared. You should only do nice things for people when you're afraid you might lose something. I think that's the pure motivation for a nice gesture. If you are afraid you'll get hurt or something will get taken away from you, then you do nice things.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to write this down and stare at it for a little while first before I'm 100% on board, but I feel good about this. I think we have it nailed.
Good,
I think everyone that was doing questions on Twitter, I think they're satisfied with that.
Oh, my God. Mike, I'm glad you said that because I forgot. We have to get a few questions from Twitter in.
Let's do it.
I will ask you this on the air. Do you want to play a song, since we're talking about all these things, and you have songs that are about these
I don't know. Sure,
emotional
I could.
concepts?
I could. I mean, I'm really drunk right now, so it might not sound like. No, I'm joking. I could. I mean, it just depends on how you are with time.
Oh,
Sure, we could do that.
we've got time, right?
Yeah.
We would love to have you.
Okay.
Let's end. Well, then we'll end it with a song.
Okay.
That's great.
Let's do that.
And guys, that was totally real. That wasn't a bullshit talk show thing. Like, do you have time to stick around and play a song? I love when they do that. Can you stick around? Do you have time? Yeah, I got you. Sure. Okay, yeah, really? Just winging it on the multi-million-dollar TV production? Okay.
Hey, man, I just brought my guitar because, I'm taking it down to get some repairs after the podcast. So, oh, well, since you've got it here.
Yeah, exactly.
That was my whole.
Yeah. I love when they would do you have time to play a song? Sure. And then they would get up and walk over from the couch. Perfect band setup. Mic, drums. It's all just there.
I've got the Chili Peppers backing me.
Okay, let's see what we have here. This is from a friend of mine. You can follow her at popup82, at popup82. Do you believe it is dead or evolved, chivalry? And can it be practiced by both genders? Yeah, I do believe it can be practiced by both genders, which is why I think ultimately the point we're driving at is it's just courteous.
Yes.
To me, it entails common courtesy. That's your pulling out the chair. That's your offering to grab the check, whatever.
Right.
Emotional courtesy. I'm here for you. I'm listening. That sort of thing. And then independent, courtesy of independence. Like, I'll give you your space.
Yeah.
You're your own person.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has evolved for sure. That's obvious. Definitely not dead, just a little confusing.
Right.
And, also, one thing you didn't mention is that the whole concept of, the idea of not getting your thank you or not getting some feedback from somebody, to whom you perform a chivalrous act. I think that's also part of it. It takes, it's not just something one person does.
Right.
Both people are kind of participating in the chivalry. It's just, they're doing different things, playing different roles. I don't think it has anything to do with not treating somebody as an equal, because I think, two people can be equal, but they don't have to be exactly the same, doing the exact same thing.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I agree. So it's not really looking for the thank you. It's dating somebody that you do this, and then you go, well, it's nice that they do that too.
Or if they don't dig it, they can communicate that well to you.
Exactly. Exactly. Here we go. Here, this is from at KOPF_KINO. Does chivalry get in the way of equality because it stresses and is based upon traditional female features? Well, I mean, we talked about that, and I think we kind of covered it with the sort of transition of chivalry through the years, and there was a time where it was in its own way demeaning.
Yeah.
But not anymore. It should be about equality.
Now it's just passive aggressive.
Yes.
At worst.
Yeah, at worst. This is from Maddox19, MADDEX19. Is chivalry underrated? Why do girls ignore it when it happens, but point it out when it doesn't? No recognition. Well, Maddox, I think you've had some bad encounters, because I think per the discussion, I
think Maddox is the type of guy that women just they see him and they're just like, I'm gonna fuck with this guy. I'm gonna be all over the map. I just want to watch him just fall apart, and then I'm gonna go tell my friends how funny it was.
I've been that guy. Have you ever been that guy?
I don't know. Probably. I mean, come on. We all have, right?
It's no fun.
Yeah.
Maddox, date better girls. I think that's, or guys if you're into guys, but date better people.
Stay away from crazy people.
Yes. This is from @ChefKDG. How do you stay chivalrous even when feminists make it difficult to want to be a good guy? Well, I mean, we talked about feminism. I don't think that the feminist stance on it is what it was. I think in the 70s, it was very, feminism to me was like it's like the shift in like the Nation of Islam. It was like there was a time where it called for really, really radical behavior.
Mm-hmm.
and a sort of segregated behavior. But as time goes and things progress, it becomes more open and more amicable because the force they're fighting against gets weakened.
Yeah.
And I think that happened with the feminist stance on chivalry.
Yeah, I think that there are people there are probably a lot of women who and men who feel that it's some sort of, like benevolent form of sexism or whatever, but that's fine. It's just that doesn't mean that there has to be a struggle. It can just kind of be like, well, if you feel if I'm adamantly opposed to chivalry,
Mm-hmm.
and I notice that somebody is trying to perform a chivalrous act toward me,
Right.
I'm not going to just straight out assume that they have some sort of malintent towards me. I might have a distaste for it, and I might communicate to that to them if I think it's important enough. But how much more serious is it? Is it, even if somebody really believes that it is deteriorating equality in society, is
Right.
it really that harmful? Is that the first thing on the list we need to tackle? I think that we have a lot more on our plate as a society right now.
I agree. Mike, we're on the same page today.
I'm sorry, man. I'm drunk. Just kidding.
We're on the same page. This is from @KaleFan, KALETHAN. Oh, it's Caleb and Ethan's dad.
Oh.
So he combined Caleb and Ethan.
Ah.
Okay, that's all right. Here's one to ponder. How would you apply chivalry to a transgender, male or female? I think it's a great question. I think that's the future, and that solves all problems. Transgender. You go, I'm straight, but God damn it, I only get along with guys. Here's a guy that now has a rack. We're in business.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with your gender or preference anymore. I think it's just another thing, like, somebody can just decide. It's just another checkbox. It's just like, look, I can only date people that are super liberal,
Right,
and they're just not on board with chivalry, and they're vegan most of the time.
right,
And that's my very specific preference, and that's what I'm looking for.
right.
And if that person is a man, a woman, transgender, whatever they are, as long as they fit into that, then I'm cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're going, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, like, because the whole checkbox mentality with the stuff,
And no redheads.
no redheads,
Yeah.
none. It's so weird. Like, there was a time where I thought online dating was a positive thing,
Yeah.
and to a certain extent, I still think it can be. But like anything else, it's been completely abused and has become a completely entitled thing, or the approach to it has become completely entitled. And it's like we look at potential significant others now like we look at like we're shopping for an apartment.
Yeah.
It's like, gotta have a porch, 2 bathrooms or bust. No, I don't want to see it if it doesn't have 2 bathrooms.
Yeah.
Like we do that with people now.
Yeah.
There's just pages and pages of smokes, 2 cigarettes a day, no more.
Yeah.
Only drinks whiskey. Grapefruit, fine. He likes grapefruit. That's okay.
Yeah.
But he has to hate oranges. Like it's so crazy, and it makes people so entitled.
Yeah.
Tinder, of course, being the ultimate version of it, where people think they can just swipe their way to love.
Yeah.
With absolutely putting absolutely no effort into it, giving nothing of themselves. I'll just swipe,
Yeah.
and it better work out.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so terrible, man. It's so terrible. I do. We got to get back to.
It's so terrible, Joe says, as he's on Tinder right now, swiping.
As I'm on Twitter, reading questions and connecting with people. Hey.
Terrible.
Goddamn technology.
We should all be at a library reading books
It just. I don't think
and
that
meeting people accidentally.
wasn't that the way you'd look up from your.
It's all so simple.
You'd peek up from your copy of Encyclopedia Brown and
Yeah.
lock eyes with some geek It hangs out in the library. And then you were there. Guys, thanks for sending the questions. I appreciate it. They were great. We answered them. And now, to end our discussion about romance and chivalry and relationships and the ups and downs of emotion,
Yes,
Michael Rosas is going to play us a song.
I'd love to.
We'd love it.
Here it goes.
Oh, that was amazing. That was awesome.
Thank you, sir.
2 songs.
Boom.
First one was called, because it's new,
Tomorrow's Man.
Tomorrow's Man, and that's one of the things you're playing out with your new stuff.
That's kind of a new song, and, I'll probably be singing it on, at the Super Bowl halftime next time around, something like that.
I heard about that.
Yeah.
You and Katy Perry?
Yeah, if it works out. Yeah.
Yeah, but I heard she might back out because you were demanding too many fireworks and things.
Yeah, well, that's her perspective. I'm just, it's a ways off. I've got a couple other up and coming talents in mind. Somebody maybe a little younger, a little hotter. She's been around for a while.
I think you should do it without all the bells and whistles.
True.
I don't think you need them.
Yeah, just one bell.
Yes, one bell, no whistle. And the second song from the album "Girl Crushes Boy" by Smile Sputnik. It's my favorite song on the album. I can't believe you just played that in my living room.
I can't either. I haven't played it in a long time, actually. So it was a pleasure to play that for you.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure to. It's the first time I've genuinely smiled in quite some time.
Aww.
And I was, my God Almighty, the nights that I drove around with my friend Jim, higher than hell, listening to that song, just cranking it.
What is he talking about, man? Some dog in a spaceship.
Go buy that album. That is a tremendous album.
Thank you, sir.
Buy all the Smile stuff. Girl Crushes Boy, The Key, Master Locks, and 5-song demo. Go buy the Flying Sparks album. Which is or it's an EP, which is
actually no, it's not even Flying Sparks anymore. So now it's just Michael Rosas. So we put together Flying Sparks. Sorry to go off onto
please
to dive into my bio.
No, do this.
But we Flying Sparks right towards the end. We were working on a 4-song EP. We very quietly put it out and then broke up real quick. So we pulled that offline, and now that is the first Michael Rosas EP instead. So it's
I didn't.
Yeah,
man, I've got a collector's item. I have it as Flying Sparks.
Yes,
I didn't even know it was.
You do.
Okay,
yeah.
Well then check out the Michael Rosas EP.
Yep.
Online, available everywhere in your digital favorite store. And then also the Satisfaction, the 2 EPs, Cougar Sharks and Flying Sparks.
Yep, and then our first demo. Which didn't really have a name.
Yeah, and they're both great, and they're out there. And what do you want to?
I'm not really plugging much, man, but I just, go to michaelrosas.com, and I've got some music on there, some sexy photos, and that's it. Let's party.
Nice. Check them out live. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Thank you, man.
I really appreciate it. And for the comedy fans out there, I'll be in Scottsdale, Arizona at the end of June at Stand Up Scottsdale, and then in New York. I'll be at Comics at Foxwoods Casino July 4th weekend, and then following that, I'll be at Helium Buffalo in Buffalo, Pennsylvania that following weekend, and I'll be bopping around New York City in between. So come see something. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Miserable. After all, you found love. The rest of us are out here on our own, sulking, trying to figure out how the fuck chivalry works. Maybe my guest and I can crack the code today. This guy, without question, one of my favorite musicians of all time. I'm so excited that he's here. He's one of the good people, one of the folks who commits his time to writing the great American pop song. I first met him, and I'm sure he probably has no recollection of this, in 1996, backstage at the Trocadero in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I went to see his brilliant power pop band Smile open for the post-hardcore outfit Civ. After that show, we parted ways, but I followed his musical career with an eager ear and an eager eye, buying every single thing he ever released, beginning with the aforementioned Smile, whose album Girl Crushes Boy is an absolute must-have for any fan of ear-catching guitar riffs and ridiculously infectious choruses. His following band, Satisfaction, brilliantly infused 70s-era guitar and piano orchestrations with the raw and honest energy of modern-day indie rock. And after Satisfaction disbanded, he returned with Flying Sparks, exploring the softer, slower world of acoustic-heavy, heartfelt song. It's the kind of stuff that sounds great really early on a Sunday morning or very late on a Saturday night. I can't stress this enough. If you haven't yet heard the band Smile, Satisfaction, or Flying Sparks, go now to a computer and download them. Shut this podcast off and go listen. You'll thank me. And if you're in the Los Angeles area, please be sure to visit one of the solo performances he's been putting on these days. You will not only not be disappointed, you'll be thrilled that you attended. Furthermore, he'll make for great discussion today because he often sings about the heart. Please welcome Michael Rosas.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you, man?
I'm doing well.
Great. Good to see you, man.
Very good to see you, man. It's all going to be downhill from that. So yeah, every word that comes out of my mouth from this point going forward will just detract and deteriorate that wonderful image you've built up in everyone's minds about me.
You're gonna do this, dude. I believe in you. I believe in you. You're gonna carry this through. And
thanks for having me, man.
Look, don't fuck up, man. That's all there is to it. Don't fuck this up.
It's all I do. No guarantees, man.
Yeah, man. I'm so psyched you're here, dude. Like,
Me too.
I was thrilled that you wanted to do the show, and then I was all stillness by our parents and the generation before us didn't apply anymore.
Right.
You know, like I felt like we were part of the first generation that sort of broke this mold of like, you get out of school and you get married and you have your kids and you stay with your wife, and if you cheat, you don't talk about it, you know, and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, like you said, in the 90s, you know, I was in college in the 90s, so it was suddenly super uber independence and completely free sexuality. And I don't mean that in the sense of like hetero versus homo. I mean like just people like openly having sex, and it was totally cool, like far beyond anything that the 60s, in my opinion,
probably,
you know, claimed. But and you're suddenly there, and then you're trying to act like a certain way on a date or in romantic pursuit of somebody because this is the way you were raised and this is how you're supposed to do it, and all of a sudden none of that stuff applied, and like you said, your head starts spinning and you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. Right. You know? And you were also, you know, add the layer of the fact that you were touring in rock music in the 90s. I mean, that certainly couldn't have made it any easier to.
No. Yeah. Very strange. You know, and then also, is your impression of that decade also that's when sort of the irony and sarcasm kind of came into full effect as part of one of, you know, I think a lot of people started adopting sarcasm and irony as a default part of their sense of humor, right? More than I noticed maybe in the 80s, but I don't know.
No, it totally was. It totally was.
Maybe people were scoffing at tradition just to be ironic or just to be kind of like, you know, I don't even know why I'm mocking certain things or certain traditions, but it just feels right now because that's what everyone's doing.
Yeah, it was the era of great irony, and that certainly bled into this decade too. The last, I mean, God Almighty, we're going on 3 decades of irony right now, and it's finally starting to fade away a little bit, thankfully. But yeah, it was the breaking in of that sort of that irony thing. It was also, I think, the beginning of the sort of entitlement phase, which is in full swing now.
Sure.
With sort of Twitter personalities and all that stuff. But so when you question things back then, the attitude was like, well, duh. You know what I mean? Like, how dare you? I remember when I was in college, a big thing was becoming like trendy lesbianism.
Yes.
Where girls were just hooking up with other girls just because.
Sure.
And then you'd be like, what? You know, if you would be like, oh, do you like girls? Well, I don't. Why does it have to be that I like girls? But it's like, dude, I'm just asking. I'm sorry. Like, if I hooked up with a guy, it would mean I liked guys. I hook up with girls. I like girls.
Right.
And that period, there was a lot of that. Like, people would do like new behaviors, and then if you dared try to define them by those behaviors, that somehow was insulting.
Right.
Which I never understood. You know, I always thought, like, if you should be proud of the thing you are, why is me giving you any sort of label with it, like an insult. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah, I totally know what you're talking about, and I've never been able to really put my finger on what, how to explain it to myself. I just sort of moved on,
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But I think that, when you were talking about the traditions and just trying to navigate where we fit in, and I was mentioning that I kind of feel like I'm right in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, I'm all for society trying to progress and trying to, just questioning things. But I feel like the best way to do it maybe is to have something in your back pocket for when you decide to tear a tradition down, you might want to replace it with something better. But I feel like in the time when I started dating, there were a lot of traditions that were being torn down in one way or another, but not being replaced with anything. So it was just kind of like, well, let's get rid of all of that chivalry nonsense, but not replace it with anything. You just kind of figure it out for yourself,
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's kind of, that's a sliver of the entitlement thing too. Well, we're going to sort of torch this thing, burn it to the ground.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, whatever, man. You know? And it's like, that's kind of a shitty approach to things. I mean, today's podcast is brought to you by the girl that got away. But thank God she did, because you're a fucking mess.
Down with Joe DeRosa.
Welcome to Down with Joe DeRosa. One topic, one guest, 1 hour. Today, we're talking about that thing that certain women long for and certain men are fighting to keep alive. Chivalry. Is it dead? Sometimes I wish it was, because it is such a tricky beast. Now, I'm going to speak about chivalry from the straight male's perspective, because that's the only way I've ever experienced it. And I know this: if a man doesn't act chivalrous, he's an asshole. If he's too chivalrous, he's a turnoff. Successful chivalry requires a perfect balance on an extremely thin tightrope. Determining that balance has given us guys a headache for a long, long time. Chivalry requires such precision, in fact, that several men say, screw it, I'll just treat women however I feel like, and I'll settle for having sex with the ones that'll tolerate my crap. Take me as I am. So there's your asshole. But other guys whine about how they only wish to shower women with love, and why, oh why, God, do so many members of the feminine gender refuse me when all I'm offering is what's best for them? And there's your hopeless romantic. Personally, I'd prefer to hang out with the asshole, not because I approve of his methods. He's just not as annoying. But then there are those guys that accept the challenge of trying to display true chivalry. And let me make a distinction here. I'm not talking about chivalry in the traditional sense, the stuff you see in those old one-panel newspaper cartoons from 1912, where there's a drawing of a guy putting his jacket over a puddle for a lady. That stuff, opening doors, pulling out a chair. I mean, when you think about it, that stuff just really falls under the umbrella of common courtesy. Most guys would appreciate those gestures as much as the women do. What I'm addressing is the act of treating the person you're romantically interested in like an independent, self-relying human being, while also coddling and celebrating them a bit, providing for, while allowing some space, while taking care of, while not smothering. It's tough, but it's the behavior that leads to a fair and balanced love, and love is never, ever easy. As far as I hear, I mean, I've never found it, so I don't really know, but I'd like to think that love is no good if it only makes you happy. You deserve to be a little so thrilled when you picked the topic of chivalry, because I was like, that's perfect. That's perfect.
So.
I've heard you, sort of sing about the pitfalls of love for many years now, and some of the nicer aspects of it too. So I think you're a guy that probably has dealt with this.
A little bit, but I kind of look at it as a topic where I could use a little schooling myself.
Yeah.
So I'm no expert. I was hoping you could kind of drop the knowledge on me. That's why I'm here. That's not what we're doing?
Well, let's try to figure it out together. This podcast is kind of like always like two people, like we're a little in the dark and we're just kind of trying to figure it out maybe.
Yeah.
But I think we probably have some opinions and, some perspective on it. But I mean,
Sure.
Let's start here. Where do you fall into the categories there? Are you more the guy that's like, fuck it, I'm not dealing with this? Or are you more the the sort of hopeless romantic, or are you more the guy kind of in the middle trying to figure out the right way to maneuver?
Yeah, I would say that I'm probably the guy that's sort of in the middle,
Yeah.
leaning towards the little, being a little old-fashioned, trying to be a little traditional
Right.
on the chivalrous side.
Right.
You know, I kind of hit my dating stride in the 90s, which was this whole mixed-up decade of,
Yeah.
people trying to tear down tradition, especially in the dating world, There were, that's when at least from my perspective, the whole metrosexual male kind of
Right.
character came along, and that sort of image. And, coming out of the 90s, I think a lot of men around my age or our age were left sort of with our heads spinning, trying to figure out, where in the hell do we fit into this whole world of, trying to be a man, but also
Yeah.
trying to be modern and progressive, but also trying to be like, I don't want to be what anyone tells me to be. I want to just be myself.
Right.
So
Well, it's tough because how old are you, if you don't mind?
40.
40. So I'm 36. We're essentially in the same age bracket. What was so tough for me was I feel like in many, many, many walks of life, but this one being no exception with dating and stuff, we come from a generation where the sort of tradition and ideas and values, for lack of a better term, that got